Actually, it's 4:01. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Walt Jesnowitz, and I have the honor of sharing the next few hours with, or at least the next an hour or so with the rest of you. And I call this meeting and pass it over to the chief.
Thank you very much, members of the board, members of the service, ladies and gentlemen. The Jim Antonori Award was first awarded in our service in 2005, and it was created in recognition of the incredible dedication to service of Mr. Jim Antonori. And Jim Antonori was Hamilton's first and longest serving auxiliary officer, being sworn in 1963. It is awarded annually to a member of the auxiliary unit who has demonstrated outstanding commitment to the Hamilton Police Service, and Jim Antonori himself in our past has presented the award. And this year, his son, Mike Antonori, will present the award for 2013 in honor of his dad, who passed away on the 6th of March, 2014. Jim Antonori passed away at the age of 74. He was a loving father of 3 children, and his commitment to serving almost 50 years as an auxiliary with the Hamilton Police Service is not matched, to our knowledge, anywhere else in the province for the auxiliary contingent of officers. But that commitment of 50 years to us is replicated in his own personal work life as well, because he worked over 40 years for the Dominion store. So, ladies and gentlemen, out of respect for the passing of Mr. Antonori, I would ask that you please rise and join us for a moment of silence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Once again, I call you to come up here for the great presentations that we're going to witness. So are we doing the 25-year pins first?
Members of the board, members of the Hamilton Police Service, ladies and gentlemen. The Ontario Police Fitness Award is a program better known as the Fitness Pin, which is a voluntary program where members of the police service can do a fitness test in order to earn a pin that goes on their uniform. The 2 gentlemen behind me have the distinction of having achieved this for 25 straight years. which is quite an accomplishment in the province. So we have Sergeant Tim Bauer and Detective Sergeant Dave Beach.
Next, members of the month, correct?
Good afternoon, Police Service Board Chair, Police Service Board members, Chief DeCare, Deputy Chief Gert, Deputy Chief Leendertz, senior officers, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to present 4 Members of the Month awards today. 2 will be for 2013 and 2 will be for 2014. For the first 2013 Member of the Month award, I would like to call forward Sergeant Jason Cattle and Sergeant Greg Jackson. On August 26, 2013, Niagara Regional Police were conducting a homicide investigation in their region. During the course of this investigation, Niagara Police received information that a suspect may have passed through Hamilton on his way to Toronto. Niagara requested that the homicide officers check a business for possible video of the suspect. Niagara also supplied officers with an older photo of the suspect and a description of his clothing. Sergeants Jackson and Cattle attended the business and obtained the video from the store. They also canvassed neighboring businesses and obtained video from 3 further stores to assist Niagara Police. These officers went further. They decided to check the area shelters in case the suspect decided to stay in Hamilton or obtain a meal. While attending a shelter, the officers came across a male fitting the suspect's description. The officer stopped this male and questioned him. He denied being the person they were looking for and wanted to leave. Even though the picture of the suspect was dated and the officers noted the suspect had scratches on his face and neck and his clothing description matched the description provided by Niagara. The officers acted quickly and placed him under arrest for second-degree murder, and he was transported to Central Station. Recognizing the suspect may have blood from the victim still on his body, the forensic unit was called to preserve and collect vital evidence. These officers are being commended for demonstrating the service's core values of relentless pursuit of offenders. They went above and beyond what was expected of them, initially gathering videos, but going further by checking shelters, thus identifying and arresting this individual. Upon the arrest, they preserved and collected vital evidence for the prosecution. This was a dangerous offender arrested without further harm to the general public. Please join me in congratulating Sergeant Jason Cattle and Sergeant Greg Jackson. For the second 2013 Member of the Month award, I would like to call forward Officers Adam Jeffries and Ryan Torrey. On September 8, 2013, at approximately 11:45 a.m., officers responded to an unknown 911 call. Information had been received that an assault had taken place in an apartment unit and the suspect had fled. Officers attended and began searching the exterior grounds for the suspect. Bystanders indicated that they observed a male fleeing from the apartment heading towards a shopping plaza parking lot. Officers Jeffries and Torrey spoke with the suspect's mother. She had just spoken to her son, and he told her that he just assaulted 2 people. Officers entered the building and further entered the unit. They found 2 victims with wounds to the head and a hammer on the kitchen floor. The suspect had knocked on the door, and when it opened, he started showing the residents a rock. Suddenly, pulling a hammer out, he forced his way into the apartment and he began assaulting the two residents, striking them several times in the head. Finally, one of the victims grabbed a flower pot, threw it at him, striking him in the face, and the suspect fled. While dealing with the victims, the suspect was observed walking down the hallway, holding another hammer in his hand. Officers Jeffries and Antonori challenged him, but the suspect stated he wished to die and wanted the police to shoot him. Both officers engaged the male using de-escalation techniques. They were able to disarm him, take him into custody without injury. These officers demonstrated outstanding composure and conflict resolution skills while dealing with this male who had just demonstrated his willingness to inflict bodily harm on two victims and himself. Both officers are being commended for their outstanding efforts that demonstrate our service's commitment to using the minimum force necessary to perform their duties. Please join me in congratulating Officers Adam Jeffries and Ryan Torrey. For the first 2014 Member of the Month Award, I would like to call forward Officers Michael Hall, Robert Deaney, Jason Drobnich, and Jeremy Setzkorn. On January 4th, 2014, Hamilton Police were called to a stabbing on McNabb Street North on the 12th floor. It was shortly after an argument in one of the apartments. A female victim was transported to hospital with serious stab wounds and succumbed to her injuries. A female suspect was arrested, but the second suspect, a male, was still outstanding. The male suspect called into communications after the incident and was believed to be suicidal and distraught. The investigation revealed he was in an apartment on the 9th floor. Realizing the immediate need for apprehension to ensure the safety of citizens in the building and the distraught male, the officers checked the 9th floor apartment. The suspect was found holding a knife to his throat, and Officer Hall immediately became involved in a negotiation. The suspect threatened to end his life by stabbing himself in the throat, explaining that he had been sharpening it while waiting for the officers to arrive. Officers Deaney, Drobnich, and Setzkorn worked together to cover Officer Hall with various levels of use of force during the negotiations. After a full hour of tactical communication, de-escalation, and negotiation, the work of these officers resulted in the suspect finally dropping the knife and being safely apprehended without injury. The officers are being commended for their professionalism, compassion, and empathy, given the high stress and volatile situation, resulting in a safe ending for all involved. Please join me in congratulating Officers Mike Hall, Robert Deaney, Jason Drobnich, and Jeremy Setzkorn. For the second 2014 Member of the Month Award, I would like to call forward Hamilton Police Summons Server David McCullough. On January 8, 2014, David McCullough was preparing to attempt to serve a summons on a person on behalf of the OPP. Being diligent in his duties, he checked the person on our records management system prior to attempting service. As a result of the query, he learned that the person was associated to a homicide that occurred in November 2013 in Hamilton. He sent homicide detectives an email advising them that he was serving a summons on a person for fail to remain and obstruct police for the OPP, but this same person was associated to one of their ongoing homicide investigations. What David didn't realize at the time was that the vehicle involved in the fail to remain was the same vehicle detectives had been looking for since November 2013. This vehicle was used by the suspects to flee the scene. As a result of the information he provided to detectives, the vehicle was located and towed. This information led to the seizure of key evidence in a murder investigation. This is an excellent example of teamwork and the important contributions we all make to solving crime and making our community safer. Please join me in congratulating David McCullough.
Lots?
Just one more. I would now like to take the opportunity to present the Chief's Pride Award. Could Sherry Lee Srigley, Program Manager for Banyan, please come forward to assist in the presentation of the Pride Award? I would also like to call upon Officer Jonathan Curtis to please come forward. The Chief's Pride Award is given to members of the Hamilton Police Service and members of the community who go above and beyond normal expectations. These are special acts of compassion, support, and quality service that are worthy of recognition. In the spring of 2012, Sherry Lee attended Division II and spoke about the East Kiwanis Community Center. Officer Jonathan Curtis spoke to her further, asking if there was an opportunity for Hamilton police officers to volunteer and run a fitness program for the youth at the center. Planning for this program started in June, and they were up and running with the official launch of the Fortis Vitam program in early 2013. Jonathan recruited 12 volunteers to offer their time twice per week, and the program became an immediate success with up to 50 area youth participating. The benefits of the program were instantaneous. The youth were in a safe place off the street. Relationships were being built, their self-esteem was developing, and all were learning about physical fitness and a healthy lifestyle. Jonathan was very passionate about this program, demonstrating drive, commitment, and enthusiasm. He worked with his volunteers building the program through research, planning, development, risk management, liability, funding, and scheduling. Through his lead, this program became an official CrossFit affiliate in May of 2013, and he took the youth group to their very first CrossFit competition. Through his work at the center, Jonathan went further. He became involved in the SNAP Connection program, which offers children under 12 who have had previous contact with police an opportunity to tour Central Station and understand the role of the police. Jonathan took this interaction one step further, and he attended the community center, speaking to all the children and their families involved in this program. This was a very meaningful and successful experience for everyone and promoted a very positive community relationship. Unfortunately, due to changes, the CrossFit program was moved. It was a loss for the center, but the relationships that were built are everlasting, and many youth in the neighborhood consider police their friends thanks to Jonathan's dedication and leadership. Please join me in congratulating Officer Jonathan Curtis as the recipient of the Chief's Pride Award.
Thank you very much. After the presentations, I'd like to welcome everybody outside in the lobby for further pictures, photo opportunities. you want to... All right, so call for Mr. Doer. Just wanted to remind you again, sir, we have 5 minutes. And thank you very much for coming forward.
It's on, eh? You can hear me? Okay. Just before you time me, I have one small thing to say. This mission statement I submitted came off the Hamilton City website. Was submitted by Neil R. Fertelman, Chief of Police, and was signed by his command staff. Now you can time me. I just want to read a couple of things out of it. It starts off, our mission. The members of the Hamilton Police Department, in partnership with the community to which we are sworn to protect, preserve, and defend, shall professionally provide our customers with courteous, empathetic service. Item 1, empathy. We will treat all persons with compassion and understanding, always demonstrating our strong belief that one should always treat others as they would like to be treated. A significant part of our business involves customer service. All personnel who come into contact with citizens shall treat ordinary citizens with extraordinary respect. Each citizen police encounter should foster a feeling of goodwill that extends throughout the community. We will treat all persons with dignity and respect regardless of their race, creed, sex, or social position. Item 2, integrity. We will do the right thing even when no one is watching. Our word is our bond. We will be honest in all of our dealings with justice as our objective. Our decisions will be based on common sense, guided by integrity. Item 3, excellence. By reaffirming our goal of overall excellence, we set the standard for pride in ourselves and in our department, always being mindful that members of the Hamilton Police Department, in both their professional and personal lives, are held to a higher standard than those we serve. Obviously, Chief, this does not exist any longer under your watch. Under your watch, we have had one officer, a 15-year member, charged with 2 counts of assault. He is not named. We have Inspector David Doyle charged with 14 counts of misconduct. He is also accused of engaging in sexual activity while on duty. We have Sergeant Derek Miller in charge of the Human Trafficking Project, charged with 13 charges. He pled guilty to 9. He sent videos of himself masturbating and pictures of his penis to the women he was supposed to help, to serve and protect. Now he is asking to keep his job, even more insult to injury. I can't see how that can ever happen, but with the Hamilton Police Force, we never know. Then Ryan Tocher, who killed 2 people and mistakenly beat a person. He is presently under investigation by the force. He's been investigated 3 times by the SIU, no charges laid. Then Farrell and McLennan, who gunned down Steve Messick beside his house. There is nothing lower than wolves in sheep's clothing. 5 people gunned down from 2010 to 2013 under your watch. These are the pictures of people that were gunned down by your officers. I think everybody's aware of that. Also, all these officers that are under investigation, whatever, are getting full pay while suspended. It's just ludicrous, doesn't make sense. All we ever wanted as families is the truth, but the truth is being hidden. In Steve's case, the SIU, along with the SIU, former Director Ian Scott are also hiding the truth. And what's up with secret meetings with you and the board? What are you trying to hide or sanitize, as you recently stated? Sanitize is a verb meaning to make clean, to alter, something regarded as less acceptable so as to make it more palatable. To me, it means cover up, plain and simple. You stated that you will sanitize all reports for the good of the families. This is an insult to us and also degrading. All we want is the truth and justice for Steve, but you made it clear this won't happen. Obviously, the SIU are the masters of sanitization and secrecy. Chief, you have lost the respect of your own good officers and the public. We know you have resigned and that you are leaving at the end of this year, but in everyone's interest, you should relinquish your post immediately. Then we can start rebuilding trust and respect in this city.
Order, please. Order, please.
The other thing is, when are the lapels camera coming?
Mr. Doerr?
Yep.
I think we're about, I don't want to cut you short, but
No problem. I got,
if you got
two more sentences here.
Okay.
No problem. The other question is, when are the lapel cameras coming? Unless, of course, the province doesn't want them. So we'll fight that. And the other question I have is, in your investigation, why hasn't the police ever been out, especially Hamilton, since Steve was a Hamiltonian? Why have you never been out and scoured the park or looked around for the 3 missing bullets out of the 9 rounds fired? Also, we want the reports from you as families. We have a right to have them. We want an unsanitized report. If you're man enough to do that, I'll sit with you and you can give us the report. We can handle anything. It doesn't have to be sanitized. All we want is the truth. And that's all we want from you before you leave. Hopefully it's soon.
Thank you, Mr. Doerr. Well, this is from my first time ever. This is very interesting. Chief, would you like to? I think we should just move on.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, I think it is critical. We spent a lot of time in setting up a policy for deputations, and therefore I believe it is critical that we follow the procedures as outlined in that policy.
Thank you.
Chair. Thank you. I want to thank Mr. Doerr for bringing forward his concerns. I also want to recognize that the members of the Hamilton Police Service, in their work every day, go out to protect our community. They go out to answer the some 80,000 calls for service that we get. Mr. Doerr starts with a mission statement brought forward, and we were just witness to 9 awards that were handed out today, and in cases where our officers were able...
Order, please.
In cases where our officers were able to intervene in very difficult circumstances and they were able to apply the law. Officers have the protection in law of Section 25 regarding the use of force. They are well trained in the use of force, they are well equipped, they are well supervised, and they are held accountable. We are held accountable through the courts, we are held accountable through the inquest courts, we are held accountable through the OIPRD, we are held accountable through the civil courts, and I absolutely stand beside our officers in the work that they do in this community every single day. And the evidence of our officers can be tested in the court where it is subject to cross-examination. It can be challenged if there are credibility or performance issues, they are dealt with. The public should be encouraged in the fact that this police service, this administration, does not stand for any misconduct and has proven track record of taking appropriate actions that are required in law and that are in compliance with the law. And
Excuse me, Chief, for a minute. We would like to have everybody please cooperating, and we would like to have the respect of who's speaking right now. Please. I'm going to cancel this meeting if I have one more interruption. So,
How can you respect? How am I supposed to respect this?
Recess, please.
Officers are very infamous for violating their oath of office.
You say kosher? Right.
Sorry, clear the, I'm sorry, I asked for order.
I will leave. This is a sham.
I didn't ask you to leave, I just asked you to give the,
I'd be glad to leave. If you guys come upstairs.
what?
Joke! Joke! Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, at this time, it would be appropriate to have a recess. Obviously, there are people that are connected in certain ways to certain issues that are very passionate about those views, and that's, I certainly respect their opportunity to have their own points of view. The problem is that we do need to have respect in this decorum, so I would suggest that we recess for 5 minutes and then reconvene to continue with the agenda.
Thank you very much. We recess for 5 minutes. like to reconvene and also allow the chief to finish what he was to say.
Thank you very much, Chair. As I was mentioning and speaking about police accountabilities through the criminal courts, the inquest courts, the SIU, the OIPRD, and where we are required and do comply with the law, and we participate in those investigations, we participate in those processes. There are times when our officers are investigated and in fact have been charged. Those charges have properly proceeded before the courts. They have been tried. They have been found not guilty. They have been declared that in a court of competent jurisdiction. A deputation is not a place where we will provide evidence. What you have heard today is unchallenged. It is not evidence. It is not rebuttable in any form in this format. So we will take these matters through the proper courses that are required in law. But I can tell you that we will stand and defend the decisions and the actions of our officers, and we will do it vigorously, as we have in many cases, and it is in compliance with the law. With respect to the issue of suspension with or without pay that was raised, the board well knows that the chiefs of police and the Ontario Association of Police Services boards have been advocating for changes to that legislation since 2007. And in the new business later today, I will be updating the board with respect to developments in that area. With respect to openness and transparency, I can tell you that this police service has shared more information than it has historically, and we will continue to do so. Any meeting that takes place that is in confidence is authorized in statute and required by law, and we comply with that law. With respect to lapel cameras, there is an awful lot of interest around those projects that are taking place. We in the Hamilton Police Service are watching those pilot projects unfold. We are looking for the issues and challenges, and we'll be back before this board at some point in the future to report on what the findings of those are, and then we will seek the direction of the board with respect to potential implementation that must be properly funded and properly staffed for the Hamilton Police Service. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Chief.
There's another point that was made in the delegation. That was I guess it's the chief's report in regards to these incidents. I'm hearing a direct request from the family to have access to that report. The chief didn't have an opportunity to respond to that. I'm just wondering if he could. Thank you.
I think the board has clearly stated its position at the last meeting.
I don't have a problem going in camera. I thought that was dependent on and concern for affected families. Here's an affected family that is actually requesting the report. So I guess that's where the rub is whether or not that's the exception when the direct family is making the request.
There are provisions within MFIPA for immediate next of kin to make application through that process, keeping in mind that the release of those reports, the legislation anticipates those reports to be confidential, and it is a discretionary authority of the board regarding release, and I think the board was very clear on that last month.
Just to clarify, I think what was in front of us was a number of requests, and that's where things got complicated versus one individual family asking for the request. So just to clear that up for the record. Okay, so where do we go, boss? Just move on. Okay, so I guess we have to yeah, so let's go for the, actually, don't we have to have a motion to receive the deputation? Mr. Whitehead? Is anybody, okay.
Do we need a seconder for that motion? Thank you.
Move to second, okay. next is 2.5, year-end report on hate crimes 2013.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairperson, members of the board, chief, deputies, senior officers, and all guests. I am Carmine Pietronero. I am the detective with the Hamilton Police Service, and I am presently assigned to the Hate Crime Unit. I work out of the Victims of Crime section, and my supervisor is Detective Sergeant Bill Anderson. I thank you for this opportunity to present the 2013 Hamilton Police Service Hate Crime Report. I have compiled the information and the statistics used to produce the Hate Crime Report for you. I'd like to start off with just a general overview of the categories for hate bias motivated crimes. The first includes any criminal offense where there's information to illustrate that the offense was motivated solely or in part because of a bias or prejudice. An example I can give you of this would be a criminal act of assault, which is precipitated with an odious remark or epithet that is made to the victim. In conjunction together, that constitutes a hate bias motivated crime. Secondly is hate bias motivated incident with overtones. This is any incident, and the difference from the hate bias motivated crime is the first centers on criminal. And that is towards any member of the public. They include some type of racial overtone, and again, epithets or odious remarks. An example of that would be a neighbor dispute where two people are arguing over a property line, not a criminal offense. However, at the end of their argument, a remark is thrown, a derogatory remark towards somebody's race. And lastly, an incident. It includes incidents that occurred at a place of worship, private dwelling house, or business belonging to a member of an identifiable group. An example of this would be a broken window at a church, a mosque, a temple, a synagogue, where there's nothing to illustrate that it was motivated by hate or bias. We capture those in case of reoccurrences and for statistical purposes. The graph shows the number of incidents that we had for 2013, and that was 122. You'll see in the breakdown, the vast majority of the 122 incidents were related to hate bias overtones. 11 hate bias motivated crimes and 2 incidents. To break that down even further, 80 events were regarding race or ethnicity out of the 122, 25 events regarding religion, 16 events regarding sexual orientation, and 1 event regarding disability. The greatest number of reported events related to race and ethnicity is further broken down. The Black community was statistically the most targeted with 56 events. The second most targeted group is categorized under religion, in particular, the Jewish community, 23 events. And the third most targeted group was the sexual orientation at 16 events. Again, these all comprise the 122 events for the year. 11 of the total reported events were classified as hate bias motivated crimes, as I previously mentioned, and this represents a 31% decrease of reported hate crimes compared to 16 crimes reported in 2012. This chart illustrates incidents categorized as strictly hate bias motivated crimes from 2008 right up until last year, 2013. And again, the drop off from 16 to 11 between 2012 and 2013. Again, another chart that illustrates the hate bias motivated crimes compared to overtones and incidents. As you can see, 111 is combined with the overtones and strictly incidents, and 11 just hate bias motivated crimes alone. Represents a significant reduction from the previous year in 2012 of 145 and 16. I'm new to the Office of Hate Crime as of January of this year, and my previous colleague, Sergeant Nancy Lance, was in the position prior to me, and she was very active with community outreach. Some of the agendas that she attended were the Committee Against Racism at City Hall, International Day of Holocaust Remembrance, International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Transphobia, which was held at our Central Police Station, Israeli Truth Week at McMaster, and she worked diligently, as am I, with the HISET, which is the Hate Crime Extremism Investigative Team, which is a provincially led team, in developing further education around hate crimes. As well, she was instrumental as an instructor in delivering a course at the Ontario Police College on hate crime. And again, those are just a few of the highlights. There are several other items that she attended. That is all that I have for you so far. Thank you for that. Any questions, please?
Well, I want to first of all thank you very much. Detective Pietroniro, right?
Correct.
What was the jump in 2011 and the figure 3 that, if you can go back to that? What was the explanation? Events classified as hate, what, yeah. That's it right there.
Right, this one?
No, the other one back. Yeah, that one there. What was that?
These are incidents that are categorized strictly as hate-motivated crimes, so those would have been the ones that had a criminal act present with them at the same time. Any other questions?
I think the question was more along 2011. There was a peak. Was there something going on, geopolitical or otherwise, that might have created a higher rate in 2011?
Again, I couldn't say with any type of certainty, as I wasn't into the position at that particular time, but what I can say is a lot of those incidents may have surrounded mischief and graffiti, which has always been problematic for us, but with the policies that we have in place, it's gotten extremely better.
Chair, if I could speak to that. And I realize you weren't in the unit at the time, but predominantly the bulk of the incidents for hate bias crimes are mischief related, where you have either swastikas on a synagogue, where you have both the mischief event plus the hate bias overtones. And I was speaking to Detective Pietroniro just before the meeting, and that has been the bulk of the decrease this year, but also historically. So where it's coming down are those events of mischief. The other related categories are pretty comparable, but that is the general decline for 2013, but certainly from 2011, that was the bulk of the incidents back then.
Well, Mr. Chair, I guess maybe if I clarify the type of the question. So obviously when the Twin Towers came down, was there a higher rate of incidents in that particular year?
Yeah, that was 2001, so sometime to predate that. Generally speaking, yes. And anti-Islamic offenses, those type of things, were on the rise at that time in 2001. I don't think it's certainly tied to the events in 2011. Or was there, your question was more around, was there a precipitating event for that?
Correct.
And we didn't see that, but there were increased reports of mischiefs that make up the bulk of that category and do make up the bulk of the hate bias incidents.
And the reason I'm asking that question, because it leads to the next question. We saw a recent article in, I believe in Ottawa, I don't know if it's a Russian ambassador or whatever was stabbed. I'm not sure what all the details were, but we're in a heightened emotional state in regards to what's taking place in the Ukraine, and we have very strong contributing Canadian with Russian came from Russia, living in Hamilton, great contributors. Is there any concern with what is transpiring geopolitically that there could be a potential and a rise in hate type crimes? And secondly, are we doing anything to hopefully prevent it or get in front of it?
I can answer that for you, sir. There's always potential with any type of world tragedy or event or ongoing dispute that's going on from country to country. We monitor this daily. Part of my routine is to have access to the internet and read as much as I possibly can, and then parlay that into any of our communities where I may identify a potential issue, and at that point we will take action and do what we have to do to assist any of the community members.
And I take it that so far so good. It doesn't appear that it's translating at all?
Nothing, sir.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Motion. Okay, motion to receive. So that would be Nancy. Madeline? Sorry, Chad. Madeline was faster. Thank you. And you must be the youth crimes, right? Welcome.
So good afternoon. I'm Sergeant Joanne Savoie, and I am the Service Youth Coordinator. And I'd just like to say hello to everyone here, the board, senior command, deputy chiefs. Hello. I'm a little nervous, so bear with me here.
It's okay, me too.
Thank you. So the background of my office has been chosen through the assistance of our 2013-2015 business plan. And specifically, there was 3 areas that we looked at, one of which was the development of adequate and efficient approaches to respond to crime and safety concerns, which include gangs and youth, amongst other things. Work with the public to share responsibilities for community safety problems and issues. Improve the utilization, the knowledge, skills, and experience of our employees so we can meet the needs of the community. Throughout this report, you will hear me refer to the YCJA. That's the Youth Criminal Justice Act. This act came into effect in 2003, and the YCJA was in response to what was identified as a fundamental flaws in how the criminal justice system operated under the Youth Offenders Act, known as the YOA. So prior to 2003, there was an overuse of custody and the reluctance to utilize non-custodial means to instill respect for others, together with a sense of responsibility and accountability. And prior to the YCJA, Canada had the highest youth incarcerations in the world. So the objectives of the YCJA are to prevent crime, ensure meaningful consequences for offenders' behavior, rehabilitate and reintegrate young persons. So that brings us to our strategic approach to youth crime. The Hamilton Police Service is committed to a multifaceted approach to youth crime, which focuses on young persons and their personal circumstances and not just the offense, so it's taken in totality. The cornerstones are based on our strategic plan and the Youth Justice Act, and the values are prevention, intervention, and enforcement, which we use in our service. So in accordance with the Youth Criminal Justice Act and our strategic approach, our officers are trained to divert young offenders away from traditional court systems. Generally, these are the first-time offenders who have committed nonviolent offenses of a minor nature. These young offenders have also demonstrated accountability for their actions, have shown remorse, and have a willingness to repair the harm that they have caused. Dr. Fred Matthews is a researcher for the Office of the Provincial Advocate of Child and Youth, and he has divided youth involvement in crime as follows. He suggests that 75% of youth are law-abiding citizens who rarely have any contact with the police. 20% of our youth come into negative contact with law enforcement for minor offenses. And this is the group that's generally considered the fence sitters. They could easily be swayed for a life of crime by peer pressure and negative influence, or positive direction by positive influence by the Hamilton Police and the community that it partners with. And we saw that one of our officers in the programs he's involved in. 5% of youth are repeat offenders who come into regular negative contact with the police. And in fact, it's generally just 1% of this group that commits the most violent offenses. It's evident that the Hamilton Police Service is targeting the correct group for charges and referring appropriate youth for diversion, as our stats will reflect similar findings. So now we're talking about the youth involved in crime. There's approximately 38,000 youth in Hamilton between the ages of 12 and 17. Of these youth, 1,868 were involved in crime in 2013. This is approximately 5%. This is a decrease from last year, as we had 2,043 youth. Of that 1,868, 535 were charged, which represents 1.4% of the Hamilton youth between the ages of 12 and 17. These low statistics can be attributed to the increased interaction with youth by the Hamilton police officers and the continued success of the Hamilton Restorative Justice Project. This brings me to the Strategic Targeted Offender Program, as we refer to as STOP. In order for a youth to be placed on the STOP list, a youth must present a high risk to reoffend, and court must impose enforceable conditions, such as curfews, attend schools or work, no alcohol or drugs, and not to associate with specific persons. A shift in mindset has taken place in our courts, imposing more home rules, making parents more accountable, and less police enforceable rules. And this reduces our number of our STOP targets. We saw a number reduced from 2012 to 2013, and I anticipate a further reduction in 2014 of our high-risk offenders within the community. So prior to this report, the youth coordinator reported on all codes rather than just the UCR codes. And I don't want to make this complicated, but I need to clarify as we move forward, as I'll be in this position, unless I totally screw this up, for the next couple of years. So I wanted to make sure that I'm going to be reporting on just the UCR codes, which are the Uniform Criminal Reports from the survey that we fill out that's mandatory, that goes to the Canadian Centre for Justice Statistics. So what's happened, as you can see on my slide here, you'll see the blue in the back, which is all the codes, and then currently in the red is just the UCR codes. So the UCR survey was designed to measure the incidence of crime in Canada, and all police agencies submit this report. So data from the UCR provides the key information for crime analysis, resource planning, and program development for policing in the community. So when I look at those stats, that's how we have to measure where we're going to put our resources and what type of presentations we'll be presenting to the community. So by removing the all codes, and when I talk about that, what it means is things that are not criminal that we've been reporting on just for a stat, which is disturbances, motor vehicle collisions. So by me removing those, it only affects approximately 250 occurrences. So it's a very minimal, but just moving forward, I just wanted it to be clear that I knew what we're talking about. So once again, as I mentioned, in 2013, there was 1,865 youths involved in crime, and 535 of those that were actually charged with an offense. That's an 8.6% decrease in youth crime from the year before. And that previous slide where I indicated those youth that were involved in crime, this slide further breaks it down even further. It goes to the males charged, females charged, and then the youth not charged. So when we add the 428 males and the 107 females, we get our 535 number. And when we add that to the 1,333, we get that total that I was referring to as the 1868. So in reference to the 535 youths that were charged with criminal offenses, that represents a 21% decrease from 2012. So now we come to the violent crime. Violent crime is defined under the YCJA as an offense committed by a young person that includes an element of cause of bodily harm, an attempt or threat to cause bodily harm, or offense that's in commission of which a young person endangers the life or safety of another person by creating a substantial likelihood of causing bodily harm. So of that, there's a 15% overall decrease involved in violent crime compared to 2012. And in 2013, there was 151 young persons charged, and this represents an 18% decrease in the violent crimes from the previous year. Property and crime involves thefts under $5,000, possession from that, break-and-enters, and mischiefs. There was an 8% decrease in young persons involved in property crime compared to the year before, and of those, 138 youths were charged compared to 168 in 2012. There was a 6% increase in youths involved in drug offenses compared to last year. However, there was only 1.4 increase of the actual youths charged. So that's a good thing. Of the 430 youths involved in drugs, only 73 young persons were charged compared to 72 the year before. Almost half of the 430, 213, were a direct result of our officers conducting drug sweeps at our schools. Most of the incidents are attributed to increased enforcement and officers becoming more adept at identifying the offenders. The Hamilton Drug Diversion Program is in partnership with the John Howard Society of Hamilton, Burlington, and area. And it diverts youth from formal justice process while holding them accountable for their actions in a community context. A program of measures is determined by the offense that would address the risks and needs as well as the needs of the person harmed by the offense and the community. The outcome of each case is reported back to the police service. On occasion, Hamilton youths are arrested outside our jurisdiction, and other police services such as the OPP or Halton may refer a Hamilton youth to the John Howard Society, and that referral is added to our groups of youth. So when we talk about that, the 217 that I refer to for my stats purpose comes directly from the Hamilton Police Service referring, and those 44 others come to us as our numbers of Hamilton youth that are diverted, but they weren't referred to us by us. So when we break down those offense types, we see that drugs is the number one deferral at 84 youths, followed by theft and then mischief. And as mentioned, there was 217 youth persons referred to extrajudicial measures by the Hamilton Police compared to 180 from the previous year. And that number, there was 11 who actually failed to complete the program and were referred back to the Hamilton Police Service. So of the young persons who completed the program, 10 of those subsequently were arrested for a similar offense and therefore are considered a success for us. So if we remove the people that did not complete and the people who were involved with a similar offense, the success rate of the program is still a success at 90%. And this is consistent with last year's statistics as well at a 91% success rate. So I mentioned earlier the number of the 1,868 youths involved in crime. This slide breaks it down further by the crime type charged and the crime type diverted. And what I mean by that is in the blue, in the forefront, you'll see the actual number of the youths that were charged with those offenses, and in the back, you'll see that we've diverted them instead of charging. And if you add up all these numbers together, you get the total of 1,868. If you count up the blue, that gets our charge to 535, and in the background, it's the 1,333. So the majority of youths are diverted for drugs, as we mentioned, at 83%, followed by property crime of 82, and 66 for violent crime. And 29 of those were diverted for other. And in this other category, some of the charges would be for court-imposed releases and failure to attend courts. So there's not really an opportunity for the officers to give them another chance and to go on a program because they've already shown a disregard for the judicial system by not following the rules imposed by the courts. And that's why in the other category you see a smaller number of people that are diverted. So out of that 1,333 youths were given those measures, it could also mean the 217 that we saw that we referred to the John Howard Society for other programs. That could be no further action, police cautions, warns, or as referrals as mentioned. So what do we do to try to get these numbers lower? The Hamilton Police Service youth officers, the resource officers, the divisional youth officers, and the community service officers have workshops and presentations to young people on various subjects, such as sexting, anti-bullying, and that's an interesting topic as well. We mentioned bullying, and it's a household word. Everyone knows what this means, but the language is changing, and you'll see possibly for my next report, the word bullying is now going to be changing to positive relationships and working on developing a positive relationship rather than the negative bullying aspect of it. Substance abuse, the dangers of binge drinking, drug diversions, homophobia. These are just some of the presentations that were conducted last year. And in partnership with our volunteers, a personal safety for youth program geared for grades 1 and 3 has been developed, and it's in the final review stages currently with the police service, with the school boards. And we are hopeful to launch that program in the new school year in September. They put a lot of work and effort into that, and it's been an ongoing project for the last several years, so it's nice to see that come to fruition. And under the business plan 2.1, work with the public to share responsibilities for community safety problems and issues. This is some of the committees that the youth coordinator and my predecessor, Harold Harris, sat on, and now some of them have become mine. Yay. Thank you. So we have a chief student advisory, and that is coming up, and that's actually probably out of all of these the best because the chief buys pizza. Thanks, chief. Actually, I think it comes out of my budget though. And through that, one of the things that was brought up that I could talk about, because there's very little of this presentation that's mine, but I do know that the last Chiefs Advisory Board that I did sit on, the overlying issue that the youths have identified to the chief as an issue within their communities of schools is mental health. So we've taken a very serious look at that, and we're implementing new presentations on mental health within the schools. And also for the Chiefs Advisory coming up in a couple of weeks, we have a specialist from the mental health community going to talk about the resources that are available to those members so that they have more knowledge of the services that are available to them. Pro-action events. Pro-action events are charity-funded programs developed and run by police officers to reach out to youth in our communities. The goal is to build mutual trust and respect between police officers and marginalized youth, breaking down the stereotypes and improving the safety of our communities for everyone. One such project was The Journey, and I believe, Deputy Leaders, you were part of that. Attended the Circle Ranch in Brantford and participated in some of the team building events. The youth that were brought in for that were from the Iraqi and Roma communities. Another such event was called Swampy, which is the Streets to Wilderness Algonquin mentoring program for youth. It's a 3-day canoe trip, and it breaks down the barriers, once again, building those positive relationships and giving youth an opportunity to go outside the streets of Hamilton and also develop those relationships with mentors and officers. So what I'd like to leave you with is that youth crime in Hamilton remains on a downward trend. Of the 38,000 youth between the ages of 12 and 17, 535 youths were charged with a criminal offense. That's 1.4%. Can we do better? I think we can. Questions?
Thank you.
Chair, John, it's always a pleasure to hear from you, and certainly miss you already, although your replacement is doing a great job.
Thank you.
But you were very enjoyable and very straightforward and very professional, so there's no wonder why you've moved to this particular position. You had an interesting number up there, and more curiosity, I was just doing the quick calculation. The amount of all those visits and that in all the high schools, that's over the last year, is that correct?
Yes.
So a full 12-month period?
Yes.
And it came out to 28 ounces of, well, I don't know if it was just, you use grams, but it came out to 28 ounces. And I'm not sure if it's all one drug or is it a combination of drugs. So can you clarify that?
It would be a combination of drugs that were found, and they usually list it. I apologize, I don't have the breakdown of that from you. But what happens is, on a monthly basis, the youth coordinator is given the drug sweeps, and it indicates these parameters here, and they further define what type of drugs that were seized during that. So in this particular slide, as you mentioned, it does talk about grams that were seized, and specifically it says marijuana here. So that would just be that particular drug, and if there was other ones, it wouldn't be captured in this particular slide.
So if we did a comparative from year to year, and I don't know if you have that with you, are we finding a greater quantity or lesser quantity in these sweeps?
Excellent question. I don't have your answer.
Okay, no problem.
I'm sure I could find it, though.
Sorry, through you, Chair, I could speak to that, having been at the meeting with the school and the regional youth coordinator before Joanne was there. It still tends to be marijuana as the bulk item. There are some other drugs, but it really is the vast majority of seizures. What they're finding is they're not getting as much in the seizures and coming up, and hopefully that's as a result of the proactive attendance there. But when they do, they've increased the number of visits, therefore the bulk quantity at the end of the day is pretty close over the years. But there have been more enforcement initiatives. You'll notice in Division 2 in particular, you've got quite a few, 35 events or number of school sweeps. And that's as a result of their divisional youth officers being very proactive and working with the schools toward that end.
Yeah, and the reason I was asking the question was to get an understanding in these sweeps. Is there proliferation of another drug other than marijuana that we're worried about and is a red flag? Was obviously the next leading question I was going to ask. But the more importantly is from year to year, the quantity of drugs in our schools, is it greater or less than the previous year? So are we making progress there? I don't have the comparative here, so that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, as I say, more seizures, less quantity, but as a result of more seizures, bulk, when you're at the end of it, is pretty close over the years.
Fair enough. Thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you. And I do believe that this slide was also captured last year in the youth report, so it could be just a matter of going back and looking at that for the comparison for you.
Chad?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and through you to Joanne. Great statistics, and I think the trends are going in the right direction almost in all categories. Question I would have, a couple of questions. First and foremost, how do we determine, knowing that youth crime happens across the city in all areas, how do we determine where we're most proactive? Are you following the statistics to say that within a certain area of the city, within a certain neighborhood, the numbers are higher than others, and I guess the action team and the HPS officers, just through their regular duties, focus more of their attention there, or is the programming more global and decentralized and just happens everywhere? How do you determine where to focus your energies and your resources?
Well, what I can tell you is that we have the three different divisions, and within the divisions we have a divisional youth officer that monitors the schools and the activity within those schools, and we also have the school resource officers that are in the schools developing those relationships, and they're their eyes and ears for the police service, and they're the ones based on, because Lower City is different than Uptown, which is different from East. So what we found is the request for presentations, what are the issues within those schools, are unique to those schools. It may not be the same trend within. However, as mentioned from the Chief's advisory group, mental health is an issue. And that was right across the board. So it wasn't specific to geographical or economic issues. So we're now in the putting together a presentation so that they can take it to all the areas. One of the things I can talk about is recently, when we talk about that 1,333 that were diverted, and we say, well, to what? And we say, well, we know 117 were sent to the John Howard Society for programs based on the offense. So if it was assault with aggression, then anger management is realistic. But what about the other 1,000? Where are they going? And it was hard for us to capture who was no more police contact, who was a caution, or just a warn. So we've worked with our records management system and our computer services, and they now put a filter through that for us. So now when the divisional youth officer comes in, because they don't work nights, they're straight days, they have the ability to go in and see in a 24-hour period what youth came up on reports. So in the past, a youth officer would get a referral from an officer if he felt that there was criminal activity or something that the youth officer had to follow up on. But if there was a youth just involved as another, that necessarily may not have gone to the youth officer, and they may never have known that that child was involved in something. So now with these new filters in place, they can now capture on a 24-hour basis or do it over a week or month to give us more ideas as to where those problems are and what they're getting involved in. So hopefully, this is new. We've just implemented in the last couple of weeks, but the officers have indicated it's a big help for them. So perhaps next year when I present to you, I could talk about specifics of where the youth that are having these issues are coming from.
Thank you for those answers. Subsequent to that, I represent an area that has, if I use the Riverdale area as an example, just off Centennial, have so many new immigrants landing in that neighborhood, and almost for everyone coming to Canada, English is certainly their second language. How are we dealing with our youth who are new to the city or new to the country, who have maybe some language barriers in addition to some of the other life challenges that may be present, whether it's mental health issues or other challenges? Do we have a strategy to deal with those people who are new to Canada and or may not speak the language or, as I mentioned, have other challenges prevalent in their life?
Language is obviously a very interesting one because English is the primary language of the Hamilton Police Service, but not necessarily the community. And we currently have a new cadet. His name is Corbin, and he is a francophone. He's bilingual, and he has indicated that he is prepared to go into the schools and help us do presentations in French. This is something that we haven't done historically, but having him, and a lot of new immigrants, English may not be their first, but French is definitely their fifth or sixth language. So we may be able to capture them that way. And also some of the programs that I was mentioning about the youth that we take under ProAction, the last year it was the Romanian and the Iraqi community. So it is that outreach, especially to communities that may have standoffish approach to police because of where they're coming from and past experiences, and trying to break down those barriers. So we have identified that that is an issue, and we will continue to look for funding and try to build those relationships. Because even though the youth crime is going down, we still have that 20% that are vulnerable that we discussed about sitting on the fence. And anything that we can do to give them that positive side to make them come over, that's what we're prepared to do.
Great to hear. My last question would be, for those of us who receive calls from the public on a daily basis, graffiti is always one of those that are at the top of the list. And I don't know where it falls into the categories that you've referenced here, but for most people in the community, it seems to be one of those collective efforts between different stakeholders and those involved with the issue, whether it be not-for-profit organizations, HPS staff, certainly our city employees who are struggling to deal with that. It seems like it's on the rise, and for as much as we're throwing as much time and resources at it, it's one of those issues that we haven't made much progress, to say the least. And so how is HPS staff dealing with that issue in particular, related to the stats that you have here and then your outreach? And I know John Howard's always been a part of that as well. How are we dealing with that issue across the city?
Thank you. In reference to the referrals, if I show this chart again, the pink area where it says 10%, that is our mischief area. The thing about graffiti is it takes seconds. So the difficult part, of course, is trying to find them to charge them with the offense. Graffiti is very near and dear to my heart. I don't enjoy it. I think it's unfortunate that they participate in that, but there has been a decrease in the community because it's something that I do track, actually. There's 3 new programs that have started in the city of Hamilton, and it's under an arts program. And one of the things that they are trying to do, and in partnership with the Hamilton Police, is bring in persons that have experienced, we say graffiti as vandalism and not wanted, and most of them are not talented. As we see, it's just cursive writing of what their street name, but some actually are talented and are wasting it. So they're hoping to capture them through a referral program, and that necessarily doesn't have to go to John Howard. It can go to one of these programs and put that energy into something a little bit more productive. But it's definitely an issue, and I don't think it's going to go away. I mean, cavemen painted on the walls, so it's in our genes, I think.
Is there a way through you, Chair, if I could just add on to that? And it's not predominantly a youth-related issue. There are components of it. It's actually young adults quite often that are involved. So in terms of our response for young offenders, we have diversion, we have cautions, but in cases where there are multiple events, then we will charge. In the cases of young adults who we charge, and some of them are approaching their 30s, in fact, we've actually opposed bail. We've actually got conditions and incarceration, if you can believe it, that it took to that point for the person to stop in their activity. So as an overall strategy for the service, we also track it at our chiefs management teams, and it's reported on a monthly basis through investigative services as opposed to the community mobilization division. So it's a broader perspective. I know that Deputy Leendertz has done a tremendous amount of work on that, and I'd hazard a guess, although it doesn't seem to help city staff, but eradicating painting over that is, as you know, the leading way to decrease the number of events. So you're still doing your work at the city. When we have hate bias crimes, of course, we investigate it. But the whole idea is to get it painted over as quickly as possible. So it has been a shift in terms of the response of the service. But for you specifically, it is more complex, and it does largely involve young adults for those persistent ones.
And there are a number of us, thank you for that. There are a number of us who are on the Clean City task force, and we'd be interested to see the statistics that you referenced, Joanne, in regards to graffiti. If they're down, that's positive news. For us, our benchmark is that eradication budget that we have for city property, and we're at, I think, the $250,000 mark annually now. That number keeps getting bigger. And so if your stats are showing that, at least for this age category, the numbers are down, that's a positive sign, and maybe, hopefully, over time, we'll start to see the budget that we have internally at the city reduced to reflect those statistics. But anything you can do to provide those recent statistics to that organization, I think, would be of a great benefit. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to ask those questions.
And I just wanted to follow up on that. And as we were mentioning, this report is just on youth. And one of our prolific taggers that did some damage up at the Mohawk College, which I reported on last year, is now an adult. So that would take him out of my category and put him into a different category. So that would definitely bring down my youth stats for that. So we're seeing, because of the age of some of our young offenders, and as the deputy alluded to, it's young adults that are also committing this offense. So we try to bring them back and give them the benefit of the doubt and give them other things other than incarceration. But once they become an adult, that's a totally different animal we're dealing with.
Terry?
Actually, there's one question that you talked about the STOP program, and I'm certainly familiar with the STOP program, excellent program. You said that there's been some changes and now sort of holding parents more responsible. But the youth category goes from 12 to 17.
Yes.
The youth responsible, I believe, is it not from 12 to 16? So at 17, what happens to the youth in that age category? Or are parents still equally responsible to the 17-year-old as they are for the child at 16-year-old? Because at 16-year-old, my understanding, they can leave the home. So
They could, but if they were given a court imposed rules of the house, if they're living under that home and they're a youth at 17, they have to still abide by those rules of the house.
bit of clarification. Thanks.
Anything further? I just want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fantastic job.
Thank you.
Move to receive. Who's Irene? Second. Madeline. Thank you. Okay, so let's move with declaration of interest. None? Anybody? Okay, so if we can go to item 4, can we accept the last minutes? Anybody? That's 4.2. Do we accept 4.2? It's 4.3 that we have the amendment that we have to make. So let's. Okay, so a motion to receive consent items?
Exception of 4.3, moving to discussion.
Yes. I was going to separate them, but okay, we can do it this way. Please. So motion to receive consent items? Nancy, Chad? Okay, and then can I put 4.3 back to you? Lois?
Yeah, so 4.3, we just need to amend section A, and instead of bylaw 3-317, it should read bylaw 13-317 in order to be the correct bylaw that's referred to in PSB 12-115A.
Okay, Chad, second. Madeline, thank you. Carried. Thanks. Okay, so now we'll call the motion for the consent items. Sorry.
That 4.3, 4.4, 4.5 are the consent items?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so you can tell I'm kind of new at this, so please bear with me. So now we can go to the consent items. Motion to, so we've got that. So can we move it as an amendment? As amended, sorry. Terry?
Or it's the annual Ontario Association of Police Services Board's 2014 Spring Conference and Annual General Meeting. I suggest, Mr. Chair, when we're trying to be frugal, but we still need to be plugged into these associations and have that information come back to this particular board, that we need not to have, with this only 5 members, we wouldn't need to have any more than one individual representing the board at this particular conference. And obviously, I think Lois attends those as well, so I think that that's automatic, I'm not sure, but so the approval of one board member and Lois to attend this, this association meeting would be probably prudent.
Nancy?
I know that a committee has been set up with a governance committee with regards to policy, so I would like to suggest that if we are going to introduce anything like that, that it be done through policy.
Chad?
Can I ask what's budgeted for the calendar year for
Lois?
events or conferences like this? This one's held in, I think I read it was in Toronto, if I'm not mistaken.
Through you, Chair, it's approximately $35,000.
For the entire year for the...
Yes, for the various conferences and trainings, yes.
Nancy?
And how does that compare to last year's budget? Does that seem to be the norm through you, Mr. Chairman, for the board?
It's the same as last year's budget.
And last year, was the board able to live within that budget allotment?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Nancy?
This is more of a comment. This is a conference which is organized by the Ontario Association of Police Services Board, and as we can see from the agenda, much of it really is items that board members in the province of Ontario really need to make themselves attuned to that. So again, the Police Services Act is very clear about board members attending conferences so that they can become better board members.
Terry?
Madam Chair, we have Federation of Canadian Municipalities, we have AMO. These are associations that the City of Hamilton belong to. We have 15 members of council. Currently on AMO, we have the mayor and Russ Powers, who's the current acting president, who brings back reports on a regular basis to inform the balance of council and what is transpiring at AMO. Till recently, we had 2 representatives on council on the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and again, I was one of them, and we would come back and make a report back to the council. And currently, we have 1. So just proportionally, all I'm suggesting, if we're trying to be frugal, take care of the pennies. This is not about not having an individual attend and provide a report back to this particular board in regards to the issues, the changes, and anything that this board needs to be educated on. No different than AMO, no different than FCM. But if we prepare to send everybody to every conference, that's fine too. I wouldn't support that though.
Nancy?
I go back to the fact that we do have a committee that's going to look at policy. Of course, if there are members of this board who don't want to wait until that happens, then I suggest a motion be put on the table. If Councillor Whitehead wants to put a motion on the table about only 2 people going to this conference, then I think that's what needs to happen.
Can I suggest something? Because Nancy, you and I were at this conference last year, and quite honestly, Terry, I think I have a lot of, you make a lot of sense in that we have to have governance and we have to look forward to, but some of these conferences take more than one person to actually properly participate in, and this is actually, last year I used to drive back and forth, so my expenses were minimal other than for myself being there. But there's other, I mean, you need one person that's going to be there around the clock, so you're not fighting the traffic, so that you're not late like I was for some of the sessions. But can I suggest to the board, maybe we can consider this as a governance issue, and we can address that issue at that particular time, and can we just accept this for face value the way it was for last year, with all due respect?
Sure, I'm fine. I'm fine with that. I think the point has been heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any other comments? So do we have a motion to accept? Anybody? Irene, second? Oh yeah, sorry. They've been, okay, good. I thought we were still discussing it, sorry. All in favor? Thanks. You guys are like really good at this. I don't know why I'm up here. Okay, so the next step for us is the Hamilton Police Services monthly report. Is that correct? Back to the chief.
Chair, item 5.1 on the agenda is the monthly report, and I draw our attentions to the National Victims of Crime Awareness Week in 2014, and I want to recognize the efforts of Susan Double and the volunteers that provide support to victims of crime. In the Hamilton Police Service, that's in excess of 80 volunteers that come and assist the service and provide an excellent level of care for those that are the victims of crime. On Monday, April the 8th, 2014, the Victim Services Branch will be hosting the community ceremony forum, and the featured speaker this year is Dr. Lori Triano Antidormi, and the event takes place at 10 a.m. at the front courtyard of Central Station, the same as it has in the past years. We work hard to protect and to support the victims of crime, and everyone is certainly invited to attend for that celebration.
Thank you, Chief. So motion to, any questions, sorry, before we do? Motion, move to receive. So Madeline, second Nancy, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, now we're item 5.2.
Item 5.2 is the year-end report for the Hamilton Police Auxiliary Unit, and I ask that this be moved to the discussion area to highlight in this what is an excellent report about the volunteerism in our community overall, and specifically the volunteering that takes place with our auxiliary unit. The unit has 87 volunteers who participate in their training. They are operational under the direction of sworn Hamilton Police Service members. They donated 17,000 hours of service to the community, are participating in crime prevention strategies. They work with the local BIAs right across the city. They help us to administer and operate the CCTV program. They work within the action strategy. They are a part of the contribution in the reduction of violent crime in our city, which, as we saw in 2012, was the largest single decrease in the entire nation of 19%. They participate in special events and are very visible in our community. And 2013, they celebrated their 50th anniversary as a unit, and I wanted to draw the board's attention to the excellent work of our auxiliaries.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions? No? So motion to approve. Terry, Chad, all in favor? Carried. Okay, now we have the 5.2.
5.3?
5.3, sorry.
Item 5.3, the Firearm Amnesty Program. Members of the board, the last amnesty for the city of Hamilton took place in March of 2006, with some 1,200 firearms being turned in over that period of time. Given that the last program took place in 2006, the Hamilton Police Service will be commissioning a firearms amnesty for 4 weeks, and it is entitled Spring Cleanup for 2014, the Firearms Amnesty Program, for members of our community to turn in unwanted firearms or ammunition. It will last for approximately a month, and we will be receiving handguns, long arms, non-restricted, restricted, prohibited weapons. Often people don't know what to do with firearms, particularly when they are generational in nature or a part of some type of inheritance. We'll run the program from April 7th to May the 2nd, but I do draw the attention of everyone to the fact that absolutely we do not want anyone bringing a firearm into a police facility. We will have a full communication strategy that will be put out. We will have a contact phone number for the public and an address through the website where citizens will be able to contact and make an appointment. And then our officers, after doing their initial checks, will be able to attend and they will be able to safely pick up the phone. So the communication strategy will roll out as we get closer to the date. And I want to recognize also that we will be including social media outreach in that as well. That program will take place for the month of April.
Thank you, Chief. Terry?
Two questions. Do we have what the stats were prior to 2006? So I don't know when we did it prior to 2006 in regards to the amnesty, and what the numbers were turned in then, so that there's we understand that what is taking place from here, from action to action.
I can't recall us doing an amnesty before. I know the federal government did an amnesty prior to 2006. In 2006, we created our amnesty as a direct result of some drive-by shootings we had in the city, and it was an opportunity for the community to get involved and really help us participate in community safety. As you know, over 1,200 firearms, 125 handguns were actually turned in, and a lot of it was some excellent media attention from the Hamilton Spectator that really came on board and helped educate our community. At the same time, what was happening also is they had the firearm, the long arm registry, and a lot of people were not compliant at that time, and so it was an opportunity for them to become compliant. We're not anticipating the same result because we did very well in 2006, but we still think it's a great opportunity when people are thinking about spring cleaning, good opportunity to get that firearm out of the closet that they're not using anymore, and we'd be glad to take it off the streets and make our community safer.
So it begs the question, Mr. Chair, whether somebody comes across, however they come across, whether it's an inheritance or otherwise, a gun that they don't want and they want to turn in, do they have to wait till the amnesty period, or is there a streamlined way that they can bring, or how would they do it, I guess, for the purposes of the public?
As you know, the amnesty is going to be starting the month of April, so they don't have long to wait. We're getting all the systems put in place right now with firearm checks, and so we'll make it very, very easy for individuals. I mean, obviously, if someone had a firearm that they wanted to get rid of, they could call us anytime, and we'd be glad to pick it up and get it off the streets. The amnesty period is a great opportunity to really educate the community and get kind of momentum going, that people say, I don't need that firearm anymore, and let's get it off the street.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, I think the point I'm making, and I'm fully supportive of it, the point I'm making is there should be a 12-year opportunity when and if somebody comes across a gun, and however they come across the gun, we need, and they need to clearly understand what that process is if it doesn't fall within the amnesty program that you're announcing. I just want to ensure that there is a plan B to ensure that if you're outside that window when you come across a firearm, that you still have the ability through whatever the process is to turn it in, and I'm not clear what that process is.
In the report, there hasn't been an amnesty since 2006, and in the report it mentions the number of guns that are seized in that period. Anybody at any time can contact the Hamilton Police Service, report that they have a firearm they wish to turn in, and we will make the appropriate checks. We will investigate, and we will secure that firearm. So anybody, any day, that really has nothing to do with amnesty at all. Anybody can turn a firearm into us any day.
And I appreciate that, Chief. I think that I just want to make sure that people understand that we don't just wait till the amnesty period to have guns turned in, that the police services encourage, quite frankly, individuals that may come across, however they might come across a gun, to make that contact with police services, and we'll make the accommodations to take it out of their hands. So I'm glad we got that clarification. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Chad?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the Chief. Chief, I was just curious to know, I've always wondered why it wasn't an annual process, and it doesn't seem like there's great cost that we'd incur either through press releases and now social media, which would have changed since the last time we had this in 2006. It seems like if we established a protocol and we had an annual, whether it's through Crime Prevention Week or part of a spring cleanup, I think is what's being marketed this time, we certainly wouldn't anticipate seeing the over 1,000 firearms that we noticed when the long gun registry was at play. But if it meant a half a dozen to a dozen every year, just because we're marketing it at a certain time, It just doesn't seem like there's a lot of cost involved, and there might be merit in making this a regular annual exercise rather than waiting for almost a decade to pass. So your thoughts on that?
I think that's, I think it's something that reasonably we could build into the policing program annually. We'll just have to have a look at that in terms of the process and the resources. But I don't.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so Terry, seconder. Chad, all in favor? Carried. And then down to number 6, new business. Yes.
If I may, under new business, I just have a comment with regards to an article which appeared in The Spectator on Friday relating to the new chief. I am cognizant of the fact that the selection of a new chief is a personnel and an in-camera item, but that article dealt with process. And I am hoping that this board will seriously consider, at this process taking place after the elections, as we could have individuals at this table who will be then working with that new chief. And so I feel that it's important that this process is considered in taking place after the elections.
Terry.
Mr. Chair, I have full confidence that we have four appointees from the province of Ontario here. We have a citizen, three. We have a citizen appointee. We know that even after the election, you may have a whole different council makeup at this chamber. You may have the same. That should not paralyze or delay the process of bringing in a new chief. So I couldn't disagree anymore. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, that's Councillor Whitehead's comment, and I have presented mine. Thank you.
Well, thank you both. Anybody else? Chief.
Another matter of new business for the information of the board. I have asked that a working group be established within the Hamilton Police Service, and that working group is the suspension without pay working group. Having commissioned that working group a number of months ago, that was led by Superintendent Nancy Goods-Ritchie, the final report has come forward, and I have reviewed that report with the command team. This board and this service has been fully supportive of the position advanced in 2007 from the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police with respect to advocating that the Police Services Act be opened and that changes be made which will allow chiefs in the province of Ontario to suspend and to suspend without pay for matters which are serious criminal offenses, controlled drugs and substances, and other federal offenses, or where members are held in custody or judicial orders which prohibit them from their office and their duties. The working group has come to us with a further recommendation that the advocacy continue, but be expanded to include serious Police Service Act matters where the chief will seek dismissal. And the recommendation of the working group has been brought forward to the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police at the Zone 4 level, and it was passed with resounding support in a recorded vote. This morning, I forwarded to the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police the position paper of the Hamilton Police Service Suspension Without Pay Working Group, along with a resolution that I will advance on behalf of the Hamilton Police Service through the OACP process to the annual general meeting, which is to be held in June. And that resolution asks for increasing the advocacy to include, although we continue to support the original position in its entirety, to include the ability for chiefs to suspend without pay in serious PSA matters, Police Service Act matters, where the chief will seek dismissal. The suspension with pay is fully intended to protect officers in the lawful performance of duty, to protect against false accusations or malicious prosecutions, but it is not designed to shield misconduct that is of officers that is not related to their oath of office or the performance of their duties. In 2013, on May the 29th, the Ontario Associations of Chiefs of Police came out with a stated position that there is simply no credible argument for continuing to pay officers charged with serious criminal offences, particularly when doing so gravely damages the public trust in policing. I would submit to you as a board that the lack of a credible argument, as identified by the OACP, applies equally to serious misconduct under the Police Services Act. Our community, myself as the chief, the command, and our fellow officers, they find that egregious misconduct is reprehensible, that it is offensive to the oath of office, that it is not even remotely related to the enforcement of law, it is not remotely related to the performance of duty in good faith, and it is certainly not what any community would properly expect of our officers. The OACP has said in 2007 that citizens should not expect to pay the salaries and benefits of officers who can't perform their duties due to serious criminal charges unrelated to their duties. That statement is true. Citizens equally should not be expected to pay the salaries and benefits of officers who can't perform their duties because of serious PSA matters that also are unrelated to their duties. Having forwarded to the OACP today the white paper that has been authored by the working group, I will be advancing this resolution at the June meeting and will be seeking the support of chiefs across the province for an expanded position. The reason we are doing this is because we need to ask for what we need in order to maintain public trust and confidence. We need to ask for what we need to protect the oath of office in our profession. And we do not need to ask for things that we think we can get at the minimum level, which do not attack the fundamental problem. I will be meeting, because of timing, with respect to the Ontario Association of Police Services Board's meetings. I will be meeting with Chair Ferguson and the OAPSB First Vice President Representative, Nancy Di Gregorio, next week early to present a formal paper to them on this issue. That paper will then flow naturally to the board proper. In the interim, I will be asking that the board chair on your behalf support this position and that move the matter through to the Ontario Association of Police Services Boards. A full report will come at the next proper full board meeting to everybody, but because of timing, the requirements to submit the reports are before the next meeting. So I'll be meeting with the chair and the first vice president of OAPSB to have that discussion on behalf of our service. We think that this is a reasonable position. You will see that in the white paper, what has been authored, in fact, are protections for the officers who do not agree with the decision of a chief. There will be an opportunity for a review of a chief's decision, and we are recommending that that review be to the Ontario Civilian Commission on Policing. However, that needs to be worked out in negotiations. We're just making that recommendation. Also, we will trigger within the new process, our recommendation is to trigger the opportunity to suspend with pay at the time when a chief serves a notice of hearing. It will then give an officer 60 days to launch, 60 days to apply for a review, at which point the 60 days will commence with the non-payment of salary and benefits. And if there is a review that takes place, then the commission that looks at it, or the governing body that looks at it, can only rule on the issue of compensation, not on the discretion which is built in law of the chief to actually suspend. So I will be furthering that on behalf of the Hamilton Police Service, and I want to recognize the committee, all of the members who have put an awful lot of effort into this, and under the direction of Superintendent Nancy Goods-Ritchie, I want to thank our Zone 4 colleagues from the OACP who have resoundingly supported this on March the 6th, and I look forward to the board having a full review and making your decision on this matter as we move forward.
Thank you, Chief. Anything else? Well, then I'd just like to remind everybody that the next meeting is April the 22nd, Tuesday, at the same location, and I'd like to get the motion to adjourn. Recess to go on camera, sorry. Yeah. We'd have to adjourn this, and then we'll have a recess. Everybody's right. I'm wrong. So, Madeline, thank you. Second. So, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.